So I have a hot take on a thing that is, I think, probably. I amuse myself thinking, "Oh, I have a hot take on this thing," because
Okay.
it's technology that predates both of us. I would expect. It's it's the audio connector that is specific to airplanes, and I have to imagine that it is the one of the most consumer hostile decisions someone could make. Maybe and the reason that this is a hot take is because I have done zero research on this, but I've only done like my mental math, and that is it could be completely flawed. I could be solving for spaghettios instead of solving for X. But what I thought was, and I don't even know why I was even thinking about this, because these connectors aren't really around that much. But or I think I was thinking about like how many connectors come with the left and right split, so that you have an adapter. So you have the 3.5 millimeter, which I think is like an 1/8 inch adapter for audio. And on headphones, since maybe always, you would have one connector that plugs in, and it would carry left and right audio for stereo. And then Apple decided to stick a microphone on their inline microphone on their iconic white earbuds when the iPhone came out, and so then you had like 4 regions. So you have if you want to know more about the connector, there is a YouTube or a Wikipedia article about it, I'm sure. Anyway, the reason I've gone way too long on this. So, but I was thinking this is user hostile because I think it would actually cost more money to install this type of connector in the airplanes, just so that you have a captive audience and require them to pay money for a connector or for headphones.
I can see the logic.
Yes, but there could be a technical reason why this is a thing, but I don't know it.
Well, the only thing that comes to mind is I do wonder if it's not easier to run the electrical, like the low voltage wire that would be necessary for those connectors to like a junction box for splitting audio out that somehow controls what goes to what seat. And if that's the case, I could see that it might be better to get a longer run, maybe like the length of the plane, if you isolate those channels instead of having them in some sort of twisted pair. This is all right, just way off the top of the head, spitballing why there might be a logical reason. It would not surprise me at all for the only reason to be exactly what you said. But the one thing that comes to mind as a possibility, though, is because if you have twisted pair connectors, you have lower distance you can travel typically than single conductor lines, especially if shielded. And so I do wonder if that's not a thing.
So that is a this is where we would need an electrical engineer to maybe chime in. So if you're
And I'm not even sure if it's just electrical engineer as opposed to maybe someone who has some real solid audio engineering expertise.
Either one.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the answer is out there. Maybe I'll look it up for next episode and provide a bit of feedback. But I was just I wasn't even looking at one. So like I have one of the adapters that came with my my Sony headphones, and I've never had a chance to use it. The last time I can think of flying on a plane with that connector was in the 2000s, but I mean, it's certainly not the case anymore. They still have single headphones, like they are no longer doing that. So I have, it leads me to believe that this was a money grab.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it wouldn't surprise me at all if that wasn't the answer. But it also wouldn't surprise me if there's just been advances in conducting signal using different materials.
That is 100% viable possibility. So
But since we are talking about airplanes or airlines who, notoriously do everything possible to upcharge and upsell, I would lean toward your explanation over mine.
They invented upselling, right?
I think so.
Pretty much. Yeah, I mean, practically.
Yeah. They definitely made it ubiquitous. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't have much on the first follow-up item. Obviously, we don't have much anyway because you haven't looked at, or pre-flight item, not follow-up. But I, on a whim, decided to watch the first couple of episodes of Murderbot. And I'm now, I think, 6 episodes in.
Oh, wow, nice.
I was pleasantly surprised, which is the only reason I mentioned it, and I won't say anything else. Like I had seen it. I thought, oh, that looks like it could be entertaining, and just kind of passed over it. And then I needed something shorter to row to the other day when I was doing a shorter duration row. And that fit the bill. And then it was like, oh, I want to see where this goes. So
nice.
Just my quick little plug for it.
I'm in the place where I've seen it. It looks interesting, but have passed on. So I'll have to check it out so that it's another show we can talk about.
And then my other one, so over the weekend, my son had 2 games, one Saturday, one Sunday. And the one Sunday is against another Hoover team that we know pretty well. Because some of the kids on that team I coached in the past. They practice one of the nights that we practice at the same time, and we scrimmage against them. And so going into the game, the other coach and I were talking about maybe he's making some changes to tactics, or like he floated the idea of doing some man marking on one particular kid who is probably the best striker we'll face, period, this season. And his comment was, and I don't really like doing it because I don't feel like it's in the spirit of the game. And I told him, I said, well, I can understand that. But at the same time, at the professional level, they're going to do that. So we can't really say that it's not. I said, what if we keep all of our tactics the same, and you and I just have our sons play in a holding midfield role? That'd be the one. The formation tweak would be we normally play with 2 strikers, and so we drop it to 1 striker and just move. Or have that position available as a holding midfielder. And it was a game that we knew was going to be tough and expected to, at best, draw. We really didn't expect it would be a solid showing for either side. And ended up winning the match 4-2. So
nice.
Our tactical tweaks worked.
Oh, that's awesome. That's got to be so rewarding.
It is, especially that it's funny. I don't know if we've actually had this part of the conversation in the past, but my son has adamantly proclaimed he is essentially a center back in this age bracket. They're coming from just calling them defenders or attackers and having very minimal difference in positioning. But he understands what the left back, center back, right back are because they're subdivided at this age bracket. And I'd constantly been telling him, you can do defensive stuff and capitalize on some of your strengths if we play this idea of more of a defensive midfielder. And it just like shrugged off over and over and over. And over the weekend, I sat down with the iPad with him with the digital board, and drew out the change that we were going to do, and we have him and the other coach's son swap in and out for each other. That way we could give them very specific guidance and let the rest of the team play the way they're used to, just to be as least disruptive as possible. And about 10 minutes into the explanation, no shit, the question I get was, wait, you mean I can be on defensive midfielder? And it's like, motherfucker, do you know? And of course I wanted to just launch into a tirade, but it's like for a year and a half I've been saying this type of role exists, and it's like it just completely evaporates as soon as I say it. And then after explaining it, and he said, well, I think I kind of like this, and then after the game, it's like, can we do that again? man, if you would just listen to me a year ago, we could have been so far ahead in this progress.
Fatherhood.
Yeah, but it's all in all, it is great. I don't know how often we'll use that particular formation because our normal game plan works, but we know we'll face that team at least once more. So I have no doubt we'll do the same kind of thing that time too. I did feel a little sorry for the kid. He got real upset. The one that we were making the tweak to kind of shut down, because you could tell he got frustrated and was upset after the match as a result. And our goalkeeper actually went over and talked to him and shook his hand and all. So good sportsmanship there.
That's nice. We had a good we had a nice showing of bad sportsmanship Saturday. Jude had a match. I think it was Gardendale, and it was tough because only 8 of their players showed up, so everyone had to play down to 8, and there were 18 on Jude's team. So it was 2 full teams plus 2 subs against their team that had no subs. They had to play all 8 the entire match, and so that's bad enough in and of itself.
That's rough. Yeah,
that's real rough. But the coach for the other team, he was just like yelling, like the kind of boomer dad in the 80s yelling at their kid for not being like professional player. That kind of yelling. And
I've got some stories there too. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say somebody said something to him, and he kind of stopped. But you know what? You know where he didn't yell? When his team scored their first goal, complete silence, not a thing. And I mean, at one point he sat down and was like looking at his phone instead of watching the match. It was just such bad form. Yeah,
and I have a lot of issues with a lot of different other coaches I've encountered over the seasons, but we had a match a couple of weeks ago now against another Hoover team, and I knew the other coach and one of the assistants because both of their kids I had coached three seasons ago, I guess, maybe 4. Whenever my first season coaching was, I had both of them, and they're baseball dads. Their kids play baseball in the spring, and then they play soccer in the fall. And they coached like baseball dads. So I don't know how often you're around baseball parents, but they're obnoxious all the time.
Yeah.
And they just, the one that I'm assisting, he came over to me a little way in and said, man, they're giving me anxiety. It's like, yeah, I get it. Let's just focus on our guys. There's not much we can do. But yeah, well, I've encountered a lot of bad coaches and a lot of bad parents, so I'm real happy with the setup, the team that we've got, and the coaching structure that we've got, because he and I align on most things. I prefer to play a little more midfield attacking centric, and he prefers to quickly build up the play and really rely on the strikers up front, which I get it. Both are quite accurate, or adequate. Not accurate.
Yes.
It's just slight difference in preference, and so we have learned to make it work.
I feel like at some point it might be like, what do I want to see? Like, what kind of match do I want to see?
Yeah, and I think because of the tactical tweak that we made with this past game, I think he is more open to tweaking it as needed once he realized that we've got a couple of kids who know how to, or understand a little bit about trying to link up the attack and defense that way. Because he likes to build out of the back, which is, I mean, I guess you really have to at this age anyway, because you're not supposed to punt. But, we have a few kids that have some pretty strong legs, and so we could easily kick it from pretty much anywhere on our field into the opposing half without too much difficulty. And that's on the larger field. So, but I'm glad that he emphasizes building it up with the short, accurate passes from the back from that standpoint, just because I think it's more well-served throughout the rest of the pitch.
Yeah.
I don't really know where I was going with that specifically. It just, there's a lot of with this particular match, maybe we do this. And, we're figuring out where our strengths are.
Well, it seems like you did a good job for this weekend. So
yeah, I was glad it worked out well, and hopefully that means Jacob will want to try it out some more, or realize that he can do more than just park in the defensive half.
How is their offside strap?
Oh, we're playing up at the midfield line, and
Nice.
they're doing pretty well.
Excellent.
There are a couple who kind of lose focus and hang back or drop back a little bit fast. So we haven't emphasized it as much as we could. Just getting them used to the idea, because they're not going to call it unless it's blatant still at this age.
Gotcha.
I mean, they're doing a good job of calling it so far, but they're allowing enough room that it doesn't really matter being that strict. So we keep calling attention to it and trying to get them to look across the line, make sure that all of them are in a line together moving forward and back.
Nice.
But we don't get too caught up in it.
Not going too technical yet.
Yeah, not quite yet. They're starting to get the idea of moving up and down and or shortening the field. So, and they spend a lot of time up at the midfield line. We have told them try not to go across midfield yet, just because they're not accustomed to shifting coverage as well as we would like. But we still have a couple that will take the ball on up and then pass it off to a midfielder after they get across. So they're developing the idea for sure.
Good. And this is under 12?
This is U11.
Under 10. Under 11, okay.
Yeah. They just changed to the 9v9 size this season. So it was 7v7 U10 in last season.
Oh, wow. Well, awesome.
I don't think I have anything else on the fun stuff. I was trying to think of anything else that would be just fun to convey, to catch up, but that's pretty much it.
Well, it's not fun stuff, but I like to see that this is what's happening.
Yeah, this one, I kind of get, well, I mean, we've talked about it a couple of times. Like, there's a certain point where it's just like, what the hell else do you do now? But I like this better because it's still addressing the topic, but it's addressing it in a way that I identify with.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what caught my eye. And then, honestly, I've had some similar thoughts, so I was glad to see them out in public. I certainly hadn't put them out there at this point, even though I had been considering dusting off the blog portion of the site and writing some articles again. But I have enough going on. I don't really want to do it.
Yeah, I've been trying to. I had not trying to, but I have been calling my representatives. It's not been. It's been sparse, but it's certainly picking up, and I think the last time I felt like I learned something. I feel like I get something new each time I think to do. It's like so. My next go around, it's like there's several things that need to be addressed, and the kidnapping of people and the arresting of people without due process is one of them.
Yeah, it's just so tough to pick on one, right? Like each time I think, oh, this is the most egregious thing to focus on now, there's something worse. And at a certain point, how do you pick one to try to focus on instead of just fighting all of it? I want to sit down and write a script, but I'm afraid that it's going to turn into like a 12-minute phone call of me just reading in order to get it all conveyed. It's like, how can I put more weight on this thing as opposed to this thing? But anyway, I digress a little bit. I guess I should introduce the article that caught my eye, and then we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah.
So The Verge had a piece entitled "Former Apple Bosses Slam Decision to Take Down Ice Block." And I find this particular topic interesting because I have friends in different places viewing this thing in ways that make it kind of difficult to say one is right over the other for certain arguments. But then, to me, this is clearly problematic. And so I'll break it down into kind of three parts. One, just to give the background on the story, Apple's facing pressure from both a former executive and a former senior manager over its decision to remove an app from the App Store that was used to flag ICE officers' locations, essentially. And the article talks about the article references the letter and pulls some things out, but it talks about how historically Apple has taken the position that it would do what was right even under pressure from governments or others or whatever. It was a cultural component of the company. And famously, the article references the standoff between Apple and the government over the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone. That was at least a highly publicized case that I studied pretty intensively because I had friends in the cybersecurity space who were struggling to wrap their head around part of the argument as well. And so I dove into that one a lot. And I probably will do something somewhat similar here. But I think here is a very different overall problem that's exacerbated because of the current administration's weaponization of other things. So if we were just looking at the app and the decision to remove the app under pressure from the current Attorney General because it, in theory, endangered officers' lives during the execution of their job, if that execution was actually done in a way that wasn't the way it was being done, like I would tend to give that argument more credence than I do, or credibility than I do now. And so there's a whole different bubble, if you will, to have to dissect and look at that argument from. And so in this particular case, there's no rationale that I can find that legitimately makes the removal of the app a positive step. And I'm sure I stumbled over or missed explaining something there because I'm trying to kind of formulate my thoughts on the fly, even though I have strong feelings on the matter. But the other argument, the argument about endangering officers' lives for doing their job, I think by itself makes sense. But when you take the actual way the job is being executed and how the officers are being used by those in power, that argument no longer holds water.
I was just going to say that they know what the job is. I mean, if that's such a problem, if the danger is such a problem, why would they do this job?
There is that argument as well. But that goes a bit deeper into other issues, I think, than trying to kind of look at are you endangering the lives of the officers versus endangering people on the streets? Where I'm trying to kind of frame it in that, which side would you lean more toward as Apple if you had to pick between the two? And unfortunately, they picked endangering people over endangering officers, which I think is the wrong choice.
I agree.
And hopefully listening to that after the fact makes sense for people, because that was definitely an odd route to wind through that conversation. I
wasn't thinking about it in terms of like endangering the people, because the whole point, I believe, now whether or not people are using it that for this is one thing, but the intention is that it's to help protect people, because right now people are in danger.
Right. And so by removing the app, you place those people in danger because you're no longer giving them the tools used to protect themselves.
Right. And then what you were saying is the logic here that it's somehow this app that was meant to be protecting the people is putting them in danger. The people, not necessarily the officers.
Not the people. So the argument on the other side is that it's endangering the officers' lives because the people are able to track the officers' locations.
Right. But is there a concern that somehow the app is being misused? And
I follow. I don't think so. I haven't seen that take, but to be fair, I don't know a lot about the app. I didn't read that much about it. I just I understood the premise. And I know multiple apps like this existed, or at least my understanding was multiple existed. Maybe it was only a couple. But either way, the entire point is to know when ICE agents were operating in an area so that you could avoid the area effectively.
Right.
Now, if it was intentionally being used to stalk or harass officers, then you could start to have a different case, maybe. But honestly, if that's the issue, then I think the execution of the job needs to be redone in a way that you're not inciting people to be antagonistic.
That's where law enforcement's difficult. You have to follow rules, and when you don't follow rules, you're as bad as the bad guy.
And people tend to respond appropriately.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't think of any scenario where law enforcement operated with as much antagonism toward a group, at least not blatantly, as this particular situation. I'm sure if you were to go back into, especially during segregation or post abolishment of segregation, there were probably some pretty horrific encounters as well, but at least it wasn't everywhere in every encounter.
Well, I was going to say at this point, this is the first time we've seen something like this in our lifetime.
It's maybe a slightly, well, no, I don't think it is. I saw something the other day. I meant to flag it and send it. That kind of helps, I think, frame this in the appropriate view. You hear a lot of people complaining about being called Nazis and fascists, etc., for whatever reason that they want to complain about it. And I saw a quick social media blurb where some person posted that they had difficulty convincing friends and acquaintances who had known them for their entire life that anyone in the administration was not a Nazi or a fascist, because they were unable to convince them that they were not a Nazi or a fascist and they had known them for their lifetime. And the follow-up little blurb for the person posting it was, hold on, maybe they're about to get it, kind of thing. Which is, I think, a perfect example of why this is problematic. Because if you are unable to convince someone who has known you for the better part of your lifetime that you're not a Nazi or a fascist, you've got a fucking problem.
Yeah. It's real hard. It's real easy. It's real easy to not be a fascist. Just don't be a fascist. It's real easy to not be racist. Don't be a racist. It's not that hard. I do it every day.
That's going to be the show title.
Hey, you know what? I grew up in a system where it's like sometimes I don't recognize certain things. And so sometimes I ask people, I was like, hey, is this a racist thing to say? And most of the time the answer is no. But every once in a while I was like, yeah, that's a bit cringy. Or that's, I don't like that. I was like, okay, good to know. And so on. So it's just. I
mean, we've said it 100 or so different ways.
Yes.
More than that, I'm sure. And it still comes down to the very core basic principle that has been stated so many times before. Just be a decent person.
We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
Or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap. I even know where you can view an episode talking about how to be a decent person. Or listen to a bunch of shows about how to be a decent person. There's a back catalog available to you today.
This in the industry is called a shameless plug. This is there are 264 episodes of this podcast before that where we occasionally talk about that. And then you've got your show, your YouTube channel. And I liked it.
Thank you.
Most recent episode.
What did you think of the audio on the most recent one? Not to digress too much, but
I thought the beginning sounded a little bit hollow, but I didn't notice it towards the...
Okay. I was trying a completely different setup. I have way too many different options available to me, but I wanted to try doing a boom mic instead and recording it to an XLR adapter to the camera. And so that's what I did with the most recent one. And to me, it was problematic a little bit. Like it wasn't that it was bad. It just, I couldn't get it to quite settle where I wanted it. And so it's something I'll continue to play with. I probably will go back to the lavalier for a bit, just because I thought that sounded better.
I'm trying to remember, is that episode 2 or episode 1? Because episode 0 is throwing me off.
Yeah, episode 2 is the one with the boom mic, and episode 1 is the one with the lavalier. Episode 0 was the shotgun mic.
Okay, I think the episode 1 with the lavalier was I thought that was the audio that I liked the most. It felt more...
It was warmer.
Yeah, it felt like you were right there.
Yeah. So. And I'm certain I can get the boom mic to be similar. I just have to kind of figure out what I'm doing with it placement-wise, because I've never had to try to make it match for me. You know, like it's that thing where other people, the audio sounds fine when you clean it up, but if I know I have a couple of different options based on the different recordings and I'm trying to get them to sound similar, but they're different, and you know, it's me playing with too many different variables. That's what it comes down to. But anyway, there's my digression.